Hi folks, Photostar here. Today we're going to look at how do you actually get something into orbit. This is suitable for beginners. And of course we're working in Kerbal Space Program 1 here. Now you start with a payload. You can see we have a little space plane and it's sitting on top of a transfer stage. It has an efficient, light, but not very high thrust engine. I'll take the fairing off to make it a little easier to see what we're doing. Now right below your payload, you're going to have a small stage with an efficient, powerful engine. One that's efficient in a vacuum, because this is going to be flying mostly in vacuum. Below that, you put a somewhat larger rocket with, you primarily want good atmospheric performance. That's what we're aiming for here. So that's basically what your rocket needs to look like. Now let's take it out to the launch pad. So we put the fairing back on here. So before you start, you want to click the SAS button for stability and open this interface in the lower left. It'll tell you what your apogee and perigee are and how long it's going to be to get to them. That will avoid needing to go out to the map view. Now the first thing you're going to do is go straight up. Full power on your rockets, and then we're going to back off on the power as we get close to max Q, around 250 meters per second, so you aren't banging your head against the wall on the max Q. We just go straight up to about 10,000 feet. I have the RCS turned off, because SAS plus RCS will cause oscillations. But this is an unstable rocket, so we're going to use RCS in the turn. You can see I turned it on just before we started the turn, around 10,000 meters. We want to kick it over to ideally 45 degrees. I'm being a little careful with this one because it's a little unstable. This one will tumble if you're not careful with it, because it's so top heavy. So once we get down into our attitude there, we're just going to climb out till we get a reasonable periapsis above the atmosphere. The engine's blown off here, and we've got a pretty good periapsis already. But we're going to get rid of the fairing so we don't have to carry it. And I'm firing the second stage engine just a bit here to get clear of the debris. And now we're just going to coast. We just need to get out of the atmosphere here. We no longer need protection from the atmosphere because atmosphere is pretty thin. We're still in the atmosphere, but it's pretty thin. Don't really need the RCS here, but it was a little while before I actually turned it off. So now we're just following the prograde marker. That keeps the that keeps us moving kind of smoothly through the air. Less air resistance there. And when we start getting within a minute of reaching periapsis, we're going to push a little with the engine. We don't want to push the apoapsis up too high. So we want to tilt down a little bit when we get to that point. Back off on the engine power. So the apoapsis stays fairly consistent. And what I'm watching here is the apoapsis. Got the throttle back a bit. What you want to see is the time to apoapsis. You want solid. If you're getting closer to the apoapsis, you add a little more thrust. If you're drifting back from the apoapsis, the time's increasing. You back off on the thrust a little bit. You can also do the same thing with raising and lowering the nose. Now, I didn't quite have enough in my second stage here, so we're going to pick up and go to the transfer stage. Ideally, you would be in orbit by the time you finished your second stage. But this is this payload is slightly heavy for this rocket. But the transfer stage has more delta V than it needs, so this is not a critical problem. But because this is a low thrust engine, we're needing to use fairly high thrust and keep the nose a bit above the horizon to make sure we don't creep up on that apoapsis. Now, as we get closer to hitting orbit, we're going to have to back off on this engine quite a lot, or we're just going to push the apoapsis up into a very high number. We want the apoapsis to stay where it is while we bring the periapsis up to match it. And at a certain point, we've got the periapsis above the ground, but still in the atmosphere. And we're just going to go to very, very low thrust, maybe even no thrust, while we get to the apoapsis. And then right at the apoapsis, you can just kick that engine with a good bit of thrust and bring your periapsis up to something close to your apoapsis in a very quick maneuver. And if you're sitting right at the apoapsis, you can't move the apoapsis. You're only going to move the periapsis, unless you move it above your position, and then peri and apo switch places. So now we're letting that periapsis drift up and trying to keep the apoapsis from drifting up too much. Nice low thrust. And there's that final burn. Pick that periapsis right up into a more or less circular orbit. And there we are in orbit. How about that? All right, thanks for watching, folks. Like, subscribe, give me a comment down there. And I'll see you next time. Thanks.